As the dizzy decade nears its end, the country is stock market crazy. The great and the humble, the rich man and the working man, the housewife and the shop girl, all take their daily flyer in the market, and no one seems to lose. Then, like a bombshell, comes that never-to-be-forgotten Black Tuesday,
October 24th, 1929, marked the beginning of a formidable era on the rise in American history. National powers quaked, and powerful countries trembled. This was the day of the notorious stock market crash, foreshadowing the dark age America was soon to be engulfed in. Days later, on October 29th, 1929, the United States' official dive into what would later be known as the Great Depression commenced, lasting approximately 10 years. Though the Depression is most notable for its restraints on the American economy, the initial crash of the global stock market and its effects quickly radiated to other nations. The Depression is often used as a precedent to demonstrate how rapidly and significantly even the largest of nations can fall. Beginning with the stock market crash of 1929, it spawned a period of plummeting stock prices due to the inflation of stock shares. People with insufficient funds to purchase shares of stock would use credit to invest in the stock market. A large portion of Americans proceeded to do the same, as many hoped to make a fortune due to the high value of stocks. However, so many individuals were investing in stocks that investors realized inflation was drastically increasing the value of stock much more than its actual worth. Not long after, the value of stocks began decreasing until the stock market finally crashed. Those who had purchased stocks through credit were financially incapacitated, and investors gained momentous piles of debt. The aftermath of the crash led to a rise of unemployment, a decline in manufacturing, and the inevitable failure of a significant portion of America's banks. The stock market crash was not the sole reason why the economy failed, but it was the leading factor of increasing the collapse of the American economy. The Great Depression signified the worst economic recession in American history, in which individuals lost their jobs and homes, and those able to keep their jobs experienced almost a 50% decline in their salaries. Consumers were spending less on goods and services as they were struggling to afford their basic necessities. African Americans in particular experienced higher financial instability and unemployment rates because discrimination was still widely evident in American societies, especially in the South. The rate of African American unemployment was double or triple that of white Americans, as many businesses would refuse to hire them, and they usually would be the first candidates to be fired from a job or have their hours reduced. As many African Americans already had lower skilled jobs, this just made it more difficult for them to survive in a dwindling economy. In a stand against the tragedies they were experiencing, many African Americans came together to form boycotts, such as the grassroots organizations that aimed to end the discrimination and social injustice of businesses that would refuse to hire African Americans. As African Americans had voted for the Republican Party in the past, many African Americans switched parties and sided with FDR, as he was seen as an activist wanting to spark a change in the Americans' dark time. Similar to what had occurred in urban areas, the agricultural sector of the United States subsequently entered a freefall. A great period of drought that most heavily impacted the southern plains caused a series of dust storms that left acres of land, once used for farming and agriculture, as useless. The storms killed livestock and crops, buried homes, and posed health concerns for individuals living in those areas. This became what was known as the Dust Bowl, or the Dusty 30s. It further worsened the declining economy as it drove farmers' families to migrate from their homes in search for arable land or other such working conditions. Land acres that were once used for farming and agricultural resources were rendered useless, and large amounts of money and jobs were lost due to this. The population in various states during that time declined at a high rapid rate due to the rough environment and the conditions along with the declining economy. However, there was some triumph to this tragedy. In relevance to the ongoing epidemic, then-President Franklin Delano Roosevelt gave an inaugural address to 100,000 people on Washington Capitol Plaza, the year of his inauguration into the presidential office in 1933.
This great nation will endure as it has endured. Will revive and will prosper. So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
In this, he reassured the citizens that the government was taking action to try and alleviate the effects of the Great Depression. His first actions consisted of the establishment of what historians often refer to as the First New Deal. This was a domestic program that manifested numerous government-branded institutions that assisted in the relief, recovery, and reform of the economic structure of the United States. This is the same part of the New Deal that produced what was known as the alphabet agencies, which either sought to improve labor conditions or enforce legislation established in FDR's Second New Deal. These organizations were established by Roosevelt via the National Industrial Recovery Act, which permitted him to accumulate $3.3 billion without Congress. This was a power utilized to create and establish many of the numerous alphabet agencies. After a long 2-year period of development, the New Deal instated countless programs essential to today's modern welfare systems, the most successful being the Civilian Conservation Corps, or the CCC. The CCC was fundamental in demeaning the problems prevalent during this time, especially poverty and unemployment. The CCC had 2 particular targets of interest when looking for employers: young men who were poor and unemployed between the ages of 18 and 25. They joined with the knowledge that they would gain benefits while recruited. It provided a minimum of 3 million men jobs during its existence between 1933 and 1942. And from there, the CCC put these men to work. Via membership into the program as one of its employees, workers had the benefit of earning checks higher than today's current minimum wage. They earned around $30 a day, often sending 30% of their earnings back home with their families to help compensate for the Great Depression. The jobs that they had included planting trees, building and sustaining forest trails, and preventing forest fires. Specifically, this organization alone planted around 3 billion trees in response to the pending problems after the Dust Bowl. Similarly, they were presented with the opportunity to tackle the challenge of gaining or regaining a high school education. From this, they developed skills and knowledge that made them more employable for other jobs that benefited society. As an example, several workers were recruited by the alternative New Deal programs such as the Soil Conservation Service or the Agricultural Adjustment Administration, whose focus was to repair America's agricultural landscapes that had fallen due to the Dust Bowl. With the completion of their work, workers had planted nearly 3 billion trees, fought erosion, and ultimately improved the environmental landscapes. By simultaneously ridding of America's unemployment and progressively eradicating poverty, the CCC is often credited to be one of the most influential New Deal programs created by FDR.